It's about time Killer Instinct finally gets a Shizzo Network video. Oh boy, we are in for some ultra combos today. Killer Instinct is a fighting game series originally published by Midway and Nintendo and developed by Rare. They were also the company responsible for other Nintendo classics such as the Donkey Kong Country games, GoldenEye 007, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day, all of which are regarded as some of the greatest video games ever made, and Killer Instinct is no exception. Today we are going to review all three of the games in the series, the first one, the second one, commonly referred to as Gold, and the 2013 reboot. So, without wasting any more time, let us rock and roll. The original Killer Instinct made its way to the arcades in 1994. One thing that gamers immediately noticed is how it bared a resemblance to Mortal Kombat, which at the time was a big deal. It should go without saying, but I think it's safe to say that Rare wanted to cash in on the success of Mortal Kombat. The graphics, the violence, the blood, and the use of no mercy moves, which is basically this game's version of fatalities. Despite being an obvious Mortal Kombat clone, it stands on its own in terms of the battle engine. The game was originally supposed to be released for the Ultra 64, which was the development name for the future Nintendo 64 in 1995, but it was ported to the Super Nintendo instead due to the Nintendo 64 being pushed back to the next year. I want to take a moment to compare the arcade version to the Super Nintendo version because there are several changes made to the SNES port. In the arcade version, the character select screen shows the characters with high-res textures and rotating animations to showcase the characters. During the versus screens, it shows animations of the characters doing their signature taunts. When we look at the gameplay, we can see how it blends 2D sprites with a 3D environment, effectively making it almost 2.5D. Also, when you get a Supreme/Awesome victory, it will show an animation of the character you are playing as in an FMV. The Super Nintendo version, on the other hand, is graphically watered down due to only being a 16-bit game system. There is not as much animations, the music sounds different, and the visual gameplay is downgraded to a more 2D environment. You'll also notice some of the stages look different than the arcade version, thus adding to the fact that this version is very watered down. Don't let these technological facts get to you, because the Super Nintendo version is really fun. It has a great control scheme coming right from the arcade version, and there is a practice and tournament mode, so it does have its pros. It also runs at a staple 60 frames per second, just like the arcade, which says a lot about the 16-bit powerhouse. The original Killer Instinct is known for its exceptional combat system that plays as a distinctive feature and main mechanic for the whole series. You can pull off awesome, master, king, and ultra combos. They're not easy to learn right off the bat, but keep practicing until you become the combo master. Killer Instinct is a must-have for anyone like myself who are huge fans of fighting games. It is without a doubt one of the best Super Nintendo games ever made and one of the best fighting games of all time. You can also download this game easily nowadays on XBLA for the Xbox One, so you don't need to have a Super Nintendo to play it, especially considering the XBLA version is based off the graphically superior arcade version, but it would still be fun to have. 2 years later, after the original made its way to the arcade, the success of the first game inevitably spawned a sequel. In 1996, Rare released Killer Instinct 2 to the arcades, and it was released to the Nintendo 64 that same year under the name Killer Instinct Gold. It took a whole year since the SNES port, but Killer Instinct finally got a release on the console that the first game was originally supposed to be released for. What makes this game so awesome? Well, it's a decent improvement over the original. The gameplay has a more 2.5D environment compared to the first game, the soundtrack is improved, the graphics are much better, and it has a more complex system than the original. It also makes use of the 6-button system similar to games like Street Fighter 2. Not that the first game didn't have it too, but still. Once again, let's compare the two versions. Much like the original, the arcade version has more animations and FMVs and is only slightly graphically superior to the N64 version. Speaking of which, the N64 version closely replicates the arcade version more so than the SNES version of the first game. That being said, there are still some changes made to this version. One leap it has over the arcade version is that the N64 version has all the stages recreated in full 3D as opposed to the scaling and distorted FMVs used in the backgrounds in the arcade version. Also, because FMVs don't fit on a cartridge, they recreated them using 2D cutouts of the characters on a 3D background, which in my opinion still looks pretty good to this day. Much like the home port of the first game, there is more modes to pick from. You have team, tournament, elimination, and more practice modes. The training modes go a lot more in depth than the first game by having the training modes teach the player the fundamentals of each respective character. You can learn their special moves, combo breakers, counters, auto doubles, and the most important of all, their combos. This is a tool I highly recommend using if you want to learn Killer Instinct. Bottom line, Killer Instinct 2 is a great sequel that stays faithful with the original. In my honest opinion, I don't think it's better than the first game, but it's a welcomed addition to the series. It has a great art style, a complex fighting system, and stable frame rate, and an excellent soundtrack that I can safely say that it's not only superior to the original, but I believe is one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. The one major gripe I have with this game is the controls on the N64 version. They are not beginner friendly at all. It takes a lot of time to get used to, but don't let that intimidate you. The controls are responsive, but some of the attacks are placed in the wrong areas on the gamepad in my opinion. I believe you can change the controls in the options menu to have it optimized for your pleasure, so there is a way around it. Much like the first game, you can easily find the XBLA version on the Xbox One, which is based off the arcade port just like the first game, which kind of eliminates the fact that you don't need to have an N64 in order to enjoy this game, but it would still be very cool to have because either way, if you're a collector like I am, this game is a must-have for your N64 collection. End of story. Ever since Rare was bought by Microsoft in 2002, the Killer Instinct series had went dormant since that time. People thought we were going to have a new game for the original Xbox, but we never got it. For many years after the release of the second game, rumors began circulating the internet that a new Killer Instinct game was being developed. However, Ken Lobb, the creative director of Microsoft Studios and the co-designer/creator of the original Killer Instinct games, denied that they were working on a third game due to the company wanting to focus on broadening their demographics. Because of this confirmation, all hope for a third game was lost. That all changed at the 2013 E3 event where Microsoft and Double Helix Games announced that a new Killer Instinct game was in the works by the original developers Rare and would be an exclusive to the newly released Xbox One. This was a welcome return to a respected game franchise, as this was the first Killer Instinct game to be released in 17 years. Not only was it a launch title for the Xbox One, but it also made its way to the PC in 2014, which is the version you are seeing for this video. The game features some really awesome mechanics that have not been used in the older games. The usage of Instinct, which can be done by pressing high punch plus high kick, which effectively powers up your character for more devastating combos. Speaking of combos, if you're a beginner to the series, this might be the best game to start with if you're casual. It has a combat assist system which allows you to pull off combos automatically with either 1 or 2 buttons without having to input any special moves. So this game is very accessible to beginners. From a visual standpoint, this game looks beautiful. The art style is some of the best I've seen in modern fighting games alongside Dragon Ball FighterZ. While on the topic on modern fighting games, it also happens to be one of the first fighting games to have season passes for when new characters arrive to the series in the form of DLCs. It may or may not be the first fighting game to have seasons, but as far as I know, it was one of the first to do it in our current generation. But be sure to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. The game also introduces my favorite mode for any fighting games, which is survival. I don't know why it took them that long to add survival into the game, but I digress. Gameplay wise, this game is fast and fluid, much faster than the older games. The combo breakers have also been slightly simplified from the older games. In this game, instead of inputting the character's special move at a precise time, you have to guess and press either the light punch plus light kick, medium punch plus medium kick, or high punch plus high kick depending on the frames of the moves. You can easily spot a fierce combo, which is basically this game's version of a high attack, just by how slower the frames of the moves are compared to the light or medium attacks, but you still have to time it right. There's nothing else I can say about this game that hasn't already been said, but the bottom line is that this game is a great reboot. And I don't know about you, but it seems like 2013 was the year of reboots. Killer Instinct, Tomb Raider, Devil May Cry, SimCity, Need for Speed Most Wanted. Man. Well, anyway, I think Killer Instinct 2013 is probably the best one since the original. Whether you agree with me or not is entirely up to you. Be sure to let me know in the comments. That is everything I have to say about these series of games, because Killer Instinct is one of my favorite video game franchises ever, and it deserves more exposure and more love from people who love fighting games like myself. I gotta say, it feels really good to be back, and I hope that you guys will be looking forward to more gaming content, let's plays, reviews, everything of that nature coming up really soon. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that way you guys will get notified for when I upload new videos, or when I do live streams, or when my new episodes of the Living Like Larry podcast air every Thursday. Until then, you guys take care. This is your friendly neighborhood reptile signing off.